It's hard being a dessert person when you're trying to eat in a calorie deficit, but don't worry, I'm here to help. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Amanda, aka Fit Food AE, and today we're making 10 high protein, low calorie desserts for chocolate lovers. These are perfect if you're the type of person who always needs something sweet after dinner, but you're not trying to break the calorie bank. So let's get started, shall we? First up, we're making chocolate chip brownies. Brownies are actually easier to make healthy than you think. It's all about portion control and controlling the amount of chocolate chips and butter that are in the brownies. And using 0-calorie sweetener, of course. These brownies are super gooey and rich, but they clock in at only 70 calories each. Now for these brownies, I use PE Science protein. It is the chocolate truffle flavor. I use this protein in pretty much every single one of these recipes, I think. But yeah, it's a whey casein blend. I haven't tested this recipe with just whey, but it'll probably still work. If you do want to purchase from PE Science, please use my discount code FIT15. The key to making these brownies lower calorie is the ingredients that I use. Obviously, I use a combination of non-fat Greek yogurt, light margarine, and then mini chocolate chips, but I went easy on the chocolate chips. Look at how gooey this batter looks though. So good. I could literally just eat it with a spoon. Make sure to mix thoroughly so there's no leftover flour. Now the loaf pan that I used was 6 by 9 inches, but you could pretty much use anything that you have. You could even use a circular pan if you want. I sprayed this loaf pan with cooking spray. I'd recommend just doing that rather than using parchment paper. Honestly, parchment paper is kind of annoying. And then I use the back of a wet spoon to spread it out. So what I do with the chocolate chips is I actually do half of them in the batter and then I save the other half to sprinkle on top. I just like them to be evenly distributed. And I also feel like using mini chocolate chips is better because then the chocolate is spread out more. For the bake time, you'll notice when you take the brownies out before letting them cool that they're just slightly underbaked. I would say put a fork in, and if it comes out mostly clean, that's good. Then let them cool completely, and after that, you can slice them. They look so shiny and delicious. The key here is not to overbake the brownies because otherwise they're going to be dry. So I slice them into 8. If you want, you can slice them into less pieces if you want even lower macros. But yeah, I feel like 8 is a good number. Find that a lot of low-calorie brownie recipes are spongy and gross, or people just try to make them as low calorie as possible and they just don't taste good. But I feel like these are a good sweet spot. These are gooey and fudgy and great as an after dinner treat. You still want to stay in your calorie deficit. I could make so many variations brownies. In fact, I actually had a video where I tested a few other brownie recipes from other creators, so I'll link that here if you're curious. But honestly, this one is the best one out there. Next up, we've got my favorite recipe in this video, and these are double chocolate cookies. These are so buttery, gooey, and delicious. Oh my god, I actually ate 4 of them yesterday before dinner, and I wasn't even hungry for dinner. But anyway, the way that we keep the calories down in these is obviously using 0-calorie brown sugar and using light margarine, and obviously just not going heavy on the margarine. And again, we use the mini chocolate chips, but we take it easy on the mini chocolate chips. Also, I've made previous versions of this recipe a little bit different, and I made 16 cookies. Then people were complaining oh, the cookies are too small, so I made these into 12 cookies instead. But amazingly, these still clock in at just over 50 calories each. So they're literally perfect if you just have a very small amount of calories left over at the end of the night. You just want to eat 1 or 2 of these. So what I like to do is roll them up into a ball, and then I'll use my fingers to kind of press it down. I think I ended up pressing it down a bit more than this. I did 1 press, and then I went through, did kind of a second round of presses. If you don't want your fingers to get dirty, maybe also wet them a bit before you do that. Now, the key here is baking them for only 7 to 8 minutes. Taking them out, they're going to look like they're underbaked, but the key is to let them cool for 20 minutes. Oh my god, look at how delicious these look. They look like they just came out of a bakery. They're so good. Surprisingly, cookies are very easy to make, lower calorie. I see a lot of recipes on the internet where the cookies are super spongy and gross. Because a lot of people, when they make these, they'll use just applesauce and none of the light butter to keep the calories as low as possible, but then they just taste gross. So yeah, these are ooey gooey. They're low in calories, but still delicious, and you could literally eat all of them one sitting. Although I would not recommend doing that because they're very sweet. Honestly, they're great for people who love sickly sweet things like me. So good. Now on to our third recipe. chocolate covered strawberry cheesecake bites. Now I know that's a long name. The way that I decided on it is, well, they're chocolate cheesecake bites, and then they also have crushed up strawberries in them. So chocolate covered strawberry just sounds super cute. They clock in at only 90 calories each. So good. I made them into 6. If you want, you could even make them into 8 and make them lower calorie. I would highly recommend using an electric mixer like this one for this recipe. You could just use a whisk and just like warm up the cream cheese, but it's not going to blend as well. It'll still work though. I've made previous versions of this recipe, like not chocolate one, but just regular cheesecake, and I didn't have the electric mixer and it turned out fine. But yeah, look at how good that batter looks, like very like milk chocolatey. And then I crushed up the strawberries into kind of like a jam sort of thing and then stirred them in. You don't have to do that. I just think that that makes the best texture, and then the cheesecakes just bake the best when it's kind of like baked in like that. So yeah, I didn't use cupcake liners. I find it just works better without them, but just make sure to spray the muffin tray with cooking spray very thoroughly. And yeah, you're going to use a muffin tray for this. Don't overfill the tray. Make it filled up like 3/4 of the way like I did here. And you can use the back of a wet spoon to spread it out and make it as smooth as possible on top. Now, a key here with this recipe is not over baking the cheesecakes, because I did that the first time I made this recipe and they turned out dry and gross. Now, this recipe does take a bit longer because after you bake them, you need to let them cool completely, and then you need to store them in the fridge for like at least 2 hours. I'd recommend 3 or more just to make the cheesecakes firm up. Now, optional here, you could put a bit of chocolate drizzle. You could just mix a bit of semi-sweet chocolate and coconut oil, but honestly, this is completely optional. They taste great without them, and macros are also better without this chocolate drizzle, but a little bit fun, and it made the cheesecakes look more presentable. So just did that. Now, I'd highly recommend enjoying this dessert cold. Like if you don't eat a whole 6 at once, or don't have a friend helping you out, or whoever, then just store the rest of them in the fridge. They're going to taste way better that way. Don't warm them up. I've made a lot of cheesecake recipes on this channel. I find that cheesecake is fairly easy to make, low calorie. If you want to make the macros even better, rather than using low-fat cheese, you could use fat-free cheese. It's just a bit harder to find in grocery stores. It still does taste good with that. Also, I would recommend, if you want these really sweet, using even more sweetener than I listed, or you can even put chocolate chips in the batter, up to you. But yeah, it just depends on how you want the macros to be. But these are so good, and I absolutely love the texture of these.
So good.
Recipe number 4, we've got our chocolate cake. So this is a whole chocolate cake for 400 calories. Obviously, it's like a mini one. I made it in a 4.5-inch mini springform pan. By the way, that's on my Amazon store if you want to use it. But yeah, in this recipe, I also use Pete Stein's chocolate truffle. This cake is cool because it's actually a layer cake. You're going to see here that I actually cut it in half to put some of the frosting in the middle and then covered it with the rest of the frosting. So this little mini springform pan, make sure to spray it with cooking spray, otherwise the batter is going to stick. And use the back of a wet spoon to spread out the batter like this. And bake it, and then when you take it out, use a fork and stick it in, and if it comes out clean, it's done. Make sure to cool the cake completely before frosting it, otherwise the frosting is going to melt. So yeah, once you take out the cake and are letting it cool, feel free to make the frosting, and then if it needs to cool more, just put it in the fridge. There you go. So then here, you're going to be very careful in cutting it in half. You can like put markers on it if you want, just to make sure it's like cut in half like that. I felt like a professional cake decorator with this one, making it so you could put half the frosting in the middle. If you want, you could just frost the entire thing. Like you don't need to do this like fancy thing, but I just wanted to make kind of like a layer style cake. But yeah, this cake is perfect because I feel like a lot of the times regular store-bought cake you get, or when you go to like a birthday party or whatever, like one small slice can be like 400 or 500 calories. But this allows people who want more of a dessert and a bigger portion to enjoy kind of like an entire cake to themselves. I know obviously it's like a smaller cake, but yeah, you could even cut it into 4 slices and enjoy it as you want. You can have like 1 slice and save the rest for later. The whole point of these dessert recipes is so people with very strong sweet tooths like myself can enjoy dessert, but still stay in their calorie deficit and not feel restricted. Next up, we've got this chocolate pudding recipe. This isn't your average chocolate pudding when you were in like elementary school and your mom hacked you like chocolate pudding with a spoon that, like, I don't know even what brand it was, but this is like an elevated one, and it's healthy because it has chia seeds. So I blended all the ingredients together. Back then I didn't have a great blender, so it took a little bit of elbow grease, but yeah, blend everything together for the pudding part, and then just look at how gooey it is. And I love the texture of chia seeds too. It makes the pudding very elevated. So this is completely optional, but I decided to use a cute little mason jar to put the pudding in. Here's the best part though. So we're gonna put the pudding in here and then actually store it in the fridge for an hour. And then after that, we're going to make the shell. Now I absolutely love a good shell. Mix the chocolate chips, a little bit of coconut oil. Otherwise the chocolate is gonna burn if you don't do the coconut oil, and it's not gonna spread very well. So you're gonna put the shell over it and then put a bit of sea salt if that's your thing. I absolutely love a sweet and salty moment. Freeze the shell, and then look, you can like break it like that, which I absolutely love doing, and I love the texture of a chocolate shell. This is so good. Obviously some people are going to be like, oh, this is like higher in calories than the other desserts, but this is delicious. It's a very big portion. You could even split it into two, and I absolutely love sweet and salty moment with the sea salt on top, and the mason jar makes this recipe really cute and aesthetic. So we've got another chocolate cookie recipe. This one is different though. So basically this giant cookie mimics the ones that you would get, you know, those like online stores that have giant like half-pound or quarter-pound cookies, and they just like, you know, they have like an absurd amount of calories, like over a thousand calories for the cookie, but you still could picture yourself eating the whole thing. So I wanted to make a healthier version of this. This has about 460 calories for the whole thing, and it's absolutely giant, although I could still eat it in one sitting. The way that I made it lower calories using a combination of light margarine as well as pure pumpkin to make it gooey, and then just using a bit less mix-ins, obviously, than those normal ones, and obviously using 0-calorie sugar. So the batter might be a bit tough. You might need to put it together with your hands like this. And then you have to make sure with this recipe to store the dough in the fridge for 30 minutes. Otherwise, it's going to spread out too much when baking. Another thing with this recipe is just like the other cookie recipe, it's going to come out of the oven and it's not going to be fully baked through, but then you just let it sit and harden and bake, because if you put it in the oven for too long, it's just going to get dry. It's literally bigger than like a baseball. It's bigger than my palm. It's so, so good, this cookie. And the inside's going to be nice and moist and delicious. Yeah, this cookie takes a little bit of time, obviously, because you have to put the batter into the fridge and you have to let it cool, whatever, but it is so, so worth it. Next up, we've got a chocolate cupcake recipe. Now, is this similar to the cake recipe except in cupcake form? Yeah, it kind of is, but you know, cupcakes are different. Sometimes we want a cupcake rather than a whole cake, and these ones clock in at 90 calories each, so they are so, so good. Sometimes I don't really know what to say for these talking parts. Like, I obviously give you guys tips for recipes or stuff that maybe I don't write into the ingredients, so people who watch the video all the way through can get the tips. But for some recipes, I'm like, oh, this is kind of straightforward, and I don't really know what to say. But comment below and let me know what kind of things you like me, what kind of things you like me saying, what kind of things you want to hear me talk about. Remember in a few videos, I would just like talk about random stuff during the recipes, and then some people commented being like, why are you talking about random stuff during the recipes? Like, just focus on the recipe, blah, blah, blah. Or like if I'd show my face, people would be like, why are you showing your face? We just want to see the recipe. But anyway, for these cupcakes, make sure to let them cool before frosting it. Of course, you can kind of make the frosting while the cupcakes are cooling. I probably could have frosted them a bit better. I feel like I was a bit messy with these, but either way, it's going in your mouth and it doesn't matter. You're not posting it on the internet. So if you want to keep the macros a bit lower, you could not put the chocolate chips on top. But for this one, I decided to put a little bit of mini chocolate chips just to make these extra delicious. I have also made cupcake recipes that were filled cupcakes, but obviously those are a bit higher in calories, but a bit more decadent, which is good. But yeah, these are great. They really pack a punch if you just want a little dose of chocolate and you don't want that entire 400-calorie cake. This makes 6 cupcakes, and I feel like these are best enjoyed at room temperature. So if you're gonna save them, put them in the fridge, and then if you want to eat one, just kind of let it sit on the counter for a bit to let it get to room temperature, and then enjoy it. Caramel chocolate skillet cookie is up next. I absolutely adore this recipe. There was a period of time where I would make it like multiple times a week for dinner. Yes, for dinner. I had a phase during COVID mostly where I would always have sweet stuff for dinner. Like I had the craziest sweet tooth, even more than I do now. And yeah, honestly, I still make this recipe, just maybe not as often as I used to. But I really love how with this skillet cookie, there's a Biscoff in the middle because then you can kind of like swirl the Biscoff around and it's really, really good. By the way, this 6-inch or 6.5-inch, whatever you can find, cast iron skillet, this is on my Amazon store. Would highly recommend getting it. A lot of my recipes use it. Make sure to spray with cooking spray before you put the batter in, otherwise it's gonna stick. I feel like I still don't clean these properly. I know someone told me like you're not supposed to use soap, you're supposed to use some sort of like salt to clean them, but I feel like I'm not very careful with that. For the batter, make sure to put half of it and then put the Biscoff and then use the back of a wet spoon to spread the other half on top. And then I also topped it with a bit of chocolate chips. Again, you can omit these if you want the macros to be lower, or you can omit the Biscoff. If you don't have any Biscoff, you could also use peanut butter. Now, sometimes I like to add a little bit of ice cream on top. Back then, I was obsessed with Halo Top. But now I'm my Ninja Creamy, so I can make my own ice cream to put on top if I really want. And yeah, this is so good and decadent. Wow, we just have 2 more recipes left, guys. So this is double chocolate cookie dough. So you'll notice I use oat flour instead of all-purpose flour. The reason I do this is because all-purpose flour needs to be heat treated. So if you want to use all-purpose flour, you can, but you just need to make sure to heat treat it. I believe you have to cook it for like 5 minutes at 400 Fahrenheit before using it. But yeah, otherwise, I really like this cookie dough recipe. I feel like I've perfected it. The very first recipe I posted on Fit Food AE on my Instagram was a cookie dough recipe. And as you could probably imagine, it didn't look very aesthetic. It was like some weird picture in like a Tupperware. But yeah, I'm way better at it now. I used a Fiber One brownie as a mixing because I just thought it was appropriate since this is brownie batter cookie dough, but you can really use whatever. You could also use an Alpha Prime brownie to make it even higher in protein. Yeah, I absolutely love the texture of this. I decided to put it in a mason jar and scoop it out like this just to make it look a bit more aesthetic, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. You can literally just eat it out of the bowl. Another optional thing with cookie dough, any chocolate cookie dough kind of recipe, is I'd recommend storing in the fridge for about an hour before you eat it, because then the texture is going to be way thicker and better. But again, that's totally optional. I know a lot of people just kind of want to eat it off the bat and don't have time for all that. I also have a couple more cookie dough recipes, so I'll put the link to the video here. There's like a chocolate chip one, like classic, and there's also a birthday cake one, so those ones are also super delicious. But yeah, this is so good and chocolatey. We're on to our last recipe, guys. 10 of these. I'm sure there's one in here that you like, but this is a Brownie Skillet. This has 330 calories for the whole thing. It's so good. And depending on the texture that you like, keep it a little bit under baked so it'll be gooey. But if you're not into that, then just bake it for the normal time it says on the screen and it'll be nice and cakey. Yeah, this recipe also uses that skillet. Hello, it's back. But yeah, if you don't have that skillet, you could just use a ramekin. No worries. I like to put half the chocolate chips in the batter and then half on top always. And using mini chocolate chips is key, obviously. But yeah, this has 33 grams of protein too, which is absolutely amazing. Honestly, I feel like I could have baked it for a bit lower here, but some of you would disagree because, again, I say this in all my dessert videos, but I get a lot of comments being like, that's raw, that's underbaked. So if you prefer cakey, then just bake it a bit longer like it shows here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed these recipes, then I'm sure you're a chocolate lover. So I'll link another video here that you should watch next with more chocolate recipes. And please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends, as it really helps the channel and I post new videos every week. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.